number, does that count, are you counting in fight and...
No,
just clarify that.
Yeah, as you know, Keith Crass passed away about a week ago. He did win the election by a pretty good margin, and so that's going to be a special election. That's not including that. It's also not including Tom Fight, which is still pending some court challenges. I think the biggest question of that race right now is the ballots need to be released, and the people deserve to know who won the election. Sealing ballots from an election is not a reasonable thing to do. The people deserve to know how they voted, how the people in their district voted, and who they elected. And then the House of Representatives has a decision to make. Do we seat somebody who received a minority of the votes, or do we honor the people's wishes? I think if we honor the people's wishes, Tom Fight will be a state representative. That doesn't include either one of those two.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
Just back on Fight, what's the further legal challenges at this point on it?
I'm not an attorney, and I've been consulted a little bit about some of that. I don't want to get into the specifics because I'll probably just mess it up. But I do know there are some other avenues for an appeal. And again, it really comes down to the basic question of, don't the people deserve to know how they voted, and doesn't the person that won the election deserve to have fair consideration before the House of Representatives, because we choose the qualifications for our members. And when we know how the people voted, then we'll have the next step. But I think the first step right now is to count the ballots. I think that's pretty basic. Count the ballots, and let's determine a winner based on who the people of District 83 voted for. I think that's a very reasonable request.
Chairman Webb,
Yes.
I just was interviewing Janine Perry, who, of course, of the Arkansas poll, and she was talking a little bit about the big Republican shift now that we have the two-party system like you all were talking about. But she said it's going to take several election cycles to determine whether that will remain so. We heard a lot of bipartisan talk from these gentlemen up here. Is it that, or what keeps you guys in the picture the election cycles down the road?
Well, it's certainly good service and providing good alternatives to the way our state has operated since Reconstruction. I think that the trend will continue. I think if you look at our history over the past several election cycles, you will see that the conservative message is the message of the average Arkansan, and that message is resonating. And the Democrat Party is continuing to move to a more liberal agenda, and people are realizing that they are conservatives first, Arkansans and Republicans. And I think you will see that continue in the next election cycles. Okay. Other questions?
I got a question for John.
John?
You know, you guys increased your numbers, you know, majority just yet. But, you know, what do you see as some of the legislative priorities in the next?
Yeah, and I don't know that necessarily. I don't think you're going to see the Republican caucus come out with some massive overreaching or massive overhaul of state government. Now, that's not to say that we don't have a big task before us. At this point, I think largely it's about keeping the wheels on the bus almost. I think the state is right now our financial situation is pretty serious. So we've got to figure out what we want to do. Do we want to do some fundamentally different things, maybe with our roads or our prison systems or our schools even? Those are all decisions that we're going to have to make down the road. I don't know that you're going to see us come out with a big platform or not. A lot of that will develop as we continue to go through the budget hearings, get our new members here. You know, these guys are running races for a year. We're going to meet tomorrow. We're going to talk. But what we do will be a result of what the people that elected us ask us to do. We've just spent a year listening to the people. They've told us what they want, and that's what we're going to do. And what that is yet, not quite sure, but it'd be good to have some balance. Thanks.
Chairman Webb?
Yes.
How much do you think the national atmosphere played a role in some of the local races here in Arkansas?
Well, certainly the national atmosphere had a role, but had good Arkansans not come forward and offered themselves for public service, we would not have seen the victories that we have seen. So these gentlemen and the ladies that ran as well and who were elected made the difference. There was certainly the atmosphere, but if there had not been the good quality candidates and the people willing to offer themselves to serve their fellow men and women in Arkansas, the victories would not have been seen, and the march toward realignment and a two-party system would not have been realized.
Would you have 3 Republican constitutional officers if John McCain was president now?
I don't know that. I'd hate to speculate on that. We might have 7. Okay.
Why weren't you all successful? If this is part of an alignment, why weren't you successful in the governor's race or in the 4th district?
You can't win them all. You know, they were hard-fought battles. We had great candidates. It's just you can't always win them all. But each one of those races, those 2 particular races in particular, contributed to the corporate victory that we see throughout the state, whether at the JP level or the state house level or the state senate level or the constitutional level or the U.S. Senate or congressional level. It was a corporate victory. Even if some came up short, it still helped the whole to achieve its goal.
So you think money played a big role in those elections?
Do I think what?
Money played a big role in those elections?
You know, to be honest, I think that the spirit of Arkansas played a big role. Conservatism. Certainly there had to be adequate funding of races, and there was. But if the spirit of the people, if our message had not been resonating with the people of this state, these gentlemen behind me, this lady behind me, would not have been elected to office. Okay? Good candidates, good volunteers, good message, adequate funding. Okay. Other questions?
I got a question for Mark.
Mark?
It was a tight race with Pat O'Brien. What was that conversation like this morning?
Mr. O'Brien was very kind and cordial, and I think he conducted himself with class with that phone call. Out of the races that I've actually been involved in, and the ones that I've actually received a call, I was probably most impressed with Mr. O'Brien's call this morning. Of course, that's a private conversation and whatnot. I just want to speak highly of the content of it.
What do you look to change once you go into the Secretary of State's office?
Well, as a former Chief Technology Officer, we're going to be looking into actually putting in and aligning the technology of the office. I think that the technology of the office is probably the fundamental infrastructure of almost every element of the Secretary of State's office. I hope the biggest change is probably going to take that to the next level to make sure that we can serve the people of Arkansas while lowering the cost of the office simultaneously.
Can you be more specific with that on the changes in technology?
Well, there's some of the changes that we're going to look at initially for technology is making sure that we are able to provide the kind of extra level of security of private data that doesn't need to be shared. And we're also going to be looking at disaster recovery and business continuity processes, so that if in the case of any kind of disaster or something like that, most of the operations of the Secretary of State's office will be able to continue without interruption, not just be able to recover, but able to continue without interruption. That may require implementation of some cloud computing technologies and stuff like that. So that's probably where you will see the biggest change, and the clients hopefully will not actually see the change in any way except for how it develops itself into better customer service.
Some people tease you a little bit about having the name of somebody else who's famous. Do you think your Secretary of State that some people were confused about who they were voting for?
You know what? We kind of polled some of that to see what it was, and in some of it, it was as little as 1%. So it didn't have a significant impact. I think that to assume that that would persuade the voters of Arkansas assumes that the voters of Arkansas are a lot less smart than I do. I think the voters of Arkansas knew, for the most part, exactly who they was voting for. And while it was fun, much like it's fun to elect Charlie Daniels, it was fun for a lot of times. But the people of Arkansas have demonstrated themselves to be a purple state that votes for the person instead of necessarily the party on these local races and down ballot races. So I'm going to assume that the people of Arkansas really knew what was going on, but they had a little fun with it.